Now, before I get started with the purpose of this video, I thought I'd just comment on the cinematic just now. It's not the most polished cinematic, which is a bit annoying, as when I was making it, I had to shut my computer off to go do something with my baby. When I came back, all the triggers for the map had just erased. They weren't visible anymore, but the map still functioned and the triggers seemed to work even though I couldn't edit them. However, I tried to make any save or changes whatsoever. The whole map would stop working and I would have lost all my progress, so I just used with what I had done in one sitting, even if a lot of it was crude and, you know, in the end of it, the Justica, which is one of the main characters of the campaign, is blue for some reason. Don't know why this is. Apparently the default tester for this one particular map was blue. I have no idea. So, fortunately it could have been a lot more polished, but I was not just going to redo a few hours of work when that cinematic was just to kind of establish what I'm introducing. And I also didn't have that problem when doing the cinematic for the later part, which was the demi-humans versus the Askarian Crusaders on the Lord and Summer tile set. But at this stage I just wanted to finish the cinematic. And so there's a lot of clips that weren't optimized and I didn't do the scenery too well and it was laggy and they could have been refined a lot further, but I just wanted to get a cinematic out because I'm about to do a segue into something completely unrelated which gives some background as to what this campaign's about. But it's going to first talk about Garithos for, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, and then go talk briefly about what I'm doing. So I first wanted to put a cinematic of what I'm actually doing before confusing everybody. But to give a bit of background, from around April 2023 through January 2024, I was working on a classic Warcraft campaign called Scarlet Blood, and the campaign would follow the story of Sir Garithos during the period of the Second War, and focus how these events would shape him during the Third War, and then it would also go from the Second War up into his death at Sylvanas' hand. And I put in a good bloody effort into it. It felt like an actual labour of love with the 3 maps that I completed over those 8-month period, and I was working on the 4th one. You know, it had custom music, custom loading screens, custom campaign screen, custom tech trees, AI voice acting, and I think I did a pretty good job at making a Blizz-like campaign. Unfortunately, on the 28th of January, I opened up Chapter 3, just because I wanted to do a final touch, and I was adding a single sheep to the map. As I always put a sheep in every map as a little Easter egg, and that's just what I do. I like the sheep models on Warcraft 3, and I decided to make it drop a clarity potion, because why not? Let's have a sheep that drops a clarity potion. And when I made this change, I saved, and when I saved, apparently it just corrupted the entire campaign file. And I'd stupidly been backing up all the AI files, audio files, custom units, icons, everything to do with the campaign except the campaign itself. Because the campaign itself is saved in the documents folder, so I was backing up the wrong folder. And so I lost 8 months of progress just because my own version of the campaign got corrupted. And that was pretty bloody depressing. So it also happened on the morning, or night, in which my first son was born. So that did dampen the blow a bit. I didn't even figure out it was corrupted until the day after. My wife was in hospital and I was sitting with her and I was going, okay, I'll do some wheel editing while everybody's resting. And then figured out everything was corrupted and I couldn't do anything about it, nobody could fix it. I couldn't open up with we got the various things that allow you to look at various Warcraft packages, but couldn't do it, which is a shame because I wanted to spend that first year, you know, when I need to be very attentive to my wife and child, I can just stop immediately, wheel editor, nothing's going on, I can get up, get off, and also I find it very relaxing because while doing map editing you just listen to music or listen to a podcast or something like that. And my wife suggested that I should recreate the campaign. I can make it just as good, but the idea was too bloody daunting. And despite the fact, you know, for that first couple of months I could remember basically every cinematic, every voice line, you know, the layout of the map and all the little Easter eggs that I put in. I just spent so many hours and hours and hours just perfecting it from my perspective to make it too good that I don't think I'd ever be able to replicate it or do justice if I tried to make it again, because I'd constantly be comparing it to the original version, which I don't think I could redo. So eventually I decided, no, I just gotta give it up. At the same time, I love making maps and I wanted to make a campaign, but I didn't want to do this one because it just kind of hurt too much to try and make it. So I decided, you know what, I'll make a completely removed campaign from the Warcraft universe and may as well do it on the D&D setting that I've been working on for the last several years, because, you know, it's a nice base, I know everything about it, And though I love the original graphics, I decided I want to make something unique, so I'll do it in the Reforged HD version so that it would have a uniqueness. So before getting into running through a brief summary of the plot and tech trees, which I think this video is actually about, I'll just get things started and off my chest by going through the plot of the Scarlet Blade campaign, which I've lost, just because I thought it was a good premise. I liked it. But I'll put a timestamp to skip all of this because I don't know how long I'll be monologuing for. Put that in the description so you can just skip through it. Alright, so we're going to start things off with Chapter 1. So, the first chapter of the campaign takes place during the Second War. So this was prior to the events of Warcraft III. So it's when the Orcs had invaded Azeroth for the second time. Now, there's not a lot of detail on the Second War because it was made before Warcraft 3, it was made before the 2000s, so they didn't really care too much about that at the time. So, we know that Sir Garithos would have been taking place in this, well, would be participating in this war in some form, so I've got a bit of creative liberty in the way I put him in here. And given that his father was a Baron of Blackwood, that roughly put him in the area of what is now Eastern Plague Lands. So, I've got him here starting off in Tyr's Hand. So, in Warcraft 2, there's a chapter where the Orcs go and invade Tyr's Hand, and so I decided I'm going to start us off with Sir Garithos and Captain Roderick, now known as Captain, because this map here isn't actually in standard definition, it's in high definition, and that's because apparently my world editor would not load trees of the standard definition, so I don't think it looks as good in this definition because it was made for standard definition, and I think the original Warcraft 3 definitely still has some good charm to it even today. Sometimes the high definition graphics don't really capture what should be done. And we also don't have any of the units from the campaign, so therefore we have the default Night Elf archers, whereas previously I had them as footmen archers, and I'm pretty sure I also had a bunch of footmen, spearmen, and footmen swordsmen, rather than just having a singular captain and archers over here. And here we've got trolls with spears, blue trolls with spears, whereas originally they were javelin throwers for the orcs. So a few things aren't in place, but effectively what would happen in this chapter is Sir Garithos and Captain Roderick would be holding off the defense of Tyr's Hand, and you would have a couple of buildings over here, and you would gather resources as citizens flee the area to allow you to produce more units to then go defend the base. So your objective was twofold. You had this main gate, which you could open and close with a command, which would help you to, station a bunch of archers out here and shoot off enemies. And with the resources as well, you have limited food supply, so you would look to upgrade your units, your footmen, spearmen, and archers, to make them a bit more powerful while staying within your food cap. You would rotate them to a Fountain of Health and Mana, which was originally here, but that seems to have just disappeared. So, not sure why that is, but I guess it was a campaign unit that I created and put it there. So the objective was to survive 3 nights, which was effectively 20 minutes in this custom scenario. And effectively you're fighting the Shattered Hand clan, the Burning Blade clan, Laughing Skull clan. I know these guys are Navy at the moment, but that was just a screw up by me, but these were the Blackrock clan, and they're Maroon. Then you had the Warsong clan, and then you had the Stormreaver clan, who then got made into Navy. They tended to have more spellcasters and ogres. These guys, well, everybody else were basically basic as hell, outside of these guys who also had ogres, given that they were the head warriors. And here we have a Tauren chieftain, but that was actually a hero that was going to invade your base on the 3rd night, when it's getting, close and everything just piles in on you. Eventually I would expect that your gate is destroyed, and then your objective would be to keep one of the 20 buildings alive. And the more buildings you had alive, the more villagers would be able to escape and the more resources you would get. So that was the basic premise of this first chapter, which I'm planning on reusing for the Arcanum Cruade first chapter, given that this one, for whatever reason, I managed to back up, as it wasn't actually standalone. It was standalone relative to the campaign, and therefore all the triggers are still there, so I can just reuse most of it and just repaint it into a non-Tyr's Hand, why did I say it like that? make it non-Warcraft friendly. But effectively that was the first chapter, and also at nightfall, basically you would get some breaks. Scout would come up and say, hey, we've just found all these camps, orc encampments, and Sir Garethos would say, you know what, that's a great idea, let's go and actually just destroy the encampments, and that would make it easier. Basically during the day you would defend the base, and you would open it and close it, because you don't want your gate destroyed, because then you don't have that flexibility. You could take the fight out here, run back to your fountain of healing, or you could have some archers take some people out over here, and then open it when you want everybody fighting. During the night you would go and destroy bases, then you'll be able to capture these catapults. They were catapults from their bases to help you destroy the other ones quicker, and that would be your optional quest for the level. And you'd also be able to go around, kill some gnolls, kill some murlocs down here, because I absolutely loved murlocs in the original Warcraft 3, they just looked fantastic. So that's effectively chapter 1 in a nutshell. So the second chapter of the campaign, this one I had a very, very early version which doesn't have any of the terrain completed, doesn't have any of the, it's got some of the general campaign triggers carried over to some degree, but the second chapter was called The Long March, and the premise was, after escaping from Tyr's hand, Sir Garethos would be going to various villages in the Eastern Plaguelands, or whatever it was called back then. I think it's called the Eastwald, gathering up mercenaries and whatnot, and marching to Stratholme, under the assumption that, well, the orcs were going to go attack Stratholme because that was a major oil provider and supply provider to the soldiers fighting over in Quel'Thalas. So his idea was, okay, we're going to do a long march from Tyr's hand all the way over to Stratholme and support them however they could. So it started off with your troops over here evading Dragonmoor scouts riding their drags, and effectively you'd have to march around here, go past some sleeping ogres, avoiding some orc patrols. Some orc patrols would fight some bandits and go running off. If you chase some bandits over here, you would find a couple of cages. One would have a footman in it, and one would have a grunt in it. But if any of these orcs had noticed you, then if they return back to their main base, so these orcs over here would run to their main base here, they would be alerted and they would start sending troops to go hunt you down. Eventually you would come over here, you destroy all the enemies over here, you would establish your base, and from there you would find that there's a couple of other orc clans in the area. Heading over to your west, you would find some militia fighting a couple of orcs. They join your team, and if the orcs escape back to their main base, we had a Storm Reaver encampment over here, we had a Dragonmoor encampment over here, and we had the Warsong clan over here. So you had 3 parties that would do scouting runs throughout, and you'd have to make sure that you actually kill them, otherwise they're going to return back to their base, and well, then the level's going to be much more difficult, because instead of sending scouts out, they're sending out more trained units. So there was an optional quest to just go destroy all 3 of these bases, and also you got to fight Grom Hellscream over here. He had a neat little Bladestorm ability as a normal ability, and for his ultimate he had an ability called Hellscream, which just did an AoE damage over time. And you could get Gorehowl if you killed him at his base, which just applied a -5 armor proc effect 20% of the time, or something similar like that. You also had a bunch of Blackpaw Gnolls over here, which gave you another optional quest to just annihilate the Blackpaw Gnolls in the region. The Blackpaw Gnolls are a type of gnoll which you find in the Ghostlands and Burning Crusade, so just using some more accurate sort of gnoll tribes. And you would also find a couple of stone golems here where you could get a Staff of Negation, which would be handy in something that was to come. As you started getting closer to Stratholme, you would notice just bodies scattered all around the place, and eventually coming over through this passageway, you would enter into a cinematic where you'd find a Alliance base which had been pretty much destroyed, bodies again laid out throughout the place, and Sir Garethos would say, okay, we need to investigate quickly, go into Stratholme. So you would eventually go across this bridge where there would be a little marker showing that there's going to be a boss fight as you go across, and then you would enter into a cinematic where you'll find some ogre warlock or something like that basically saying, hey, we're going to kill you all, yada yada yada. He casts a spell which causes some rocks or rubble from these archways to collapse, and basically locks your team in for a boss fight. And just after that, Sir Garethos turns to Captain Roderick saying, hey, disregard that last order. slaughter them all, let none survive. And then you actually get a quest, which I think is called a Purge of Strathom or something, and then your quest is, hey, kill 100 orcs through this region, which I thought was a nice little tie back. Also a little Easter egg, if you destroy one of these city buildings, you'll find some plagued villages, which will then turn into zombies. Kill one of them and you get a little charm which summons an abomination to fight for you. So basically you now have this quest to go through Strathom and do a purge of orcs. Effectively, orcs, ogres, anybody else fighting with the horde. Coming over here, you would find... good, I did have something over here. You would find a bunch of the remnants of Strathom fighting along here. If you go join them, they will fight, and after the fight ends, they will start scouring through Strathom, killing orcs wherever they can find them. Once you kill 40 orcs, in the harbour over here, we have a boat which would come through here and land right here, unloading General Maldaza and several knights, and then they, elite knights actually, and they would then help you in destroying every orc in the area. Once you've killed 100 orcs, then you would go have a chat with General Maldaza. He would say, good work, yada yada yada. You'd hear from Sir Garethos that he had, picked up troops and came to Strathom because he thought it was a good idea, and it was a good idea. Unfortunately, they were just a bit too late, even though they marched straight there. It's a 3-day or 4-day march, so good work to you, Sir Garethos. General Maldaza will then say, hey, actually, it'd be great if we could do a pincer attack on the trolls over in Quel'Thalas. How about our high elf allies? Tell you what, since you've been marching for 4 days, take my ship, go to Windrunner Village, and head to the east towards Tranquillin. He will go the long route. Can't remember what passageway there is, but there's a passageway over in the eastern Plague Lands which leads into the Ghost Lands, and he would come in through there, and then the plan would be to pincer attack from the south, from the east, from Windrunner Village, and from Tranquillin, and just destroy Zorjin and all of his Amani trolls. That's a premise for Chapter 2. And then we have Chapter 3. So I wanted a bit of change of scenery, because Warcraft 2 takes place the first part, I believe, in winter, or at least when Tyr's Hand was being attacked. So I wanted it to be winter when the campaign started. However, I didn't want the same terrain / tile set for the whole time, so at this stage I remembered, hey, Quel'Thalas is supposed to always be in a perpetual spring, summer sort of tile set, so we got a nice green one. So this chapter would start off with Sir Garethos and his troops coming in with a boat towards Windrunner Village. Oh, why is it so dark? Not sure why it's so dark, but it's probably because, this is using some custom mod graphics. But basically you come in on the boats and you see the lovely Windrunner Spire over there, which even in SD, that model still applies, and it actually looked fine, the standard ST textures. So that was fine. Anyway, you land over here on the shores, unload, and Sir Garethos would be commenting, Evergreen Quel'Thalas, so the rumours are true. But then Roderick would make note of the fact that it's a perpetual sort of summer in here. Sir Garethos is glad. He says, alright, let's unload, let's go help them. So in the first chapter, you got the footmen, you got the spearmen, you got the archers, and you also got clerics, which is just basic healers. In the second chapter, you're introduced to javeliners, which would also have ensnare, and would have a flaming javelin, which did siege damage. In this one, you're introduced to your catapults, so you can actually do some sieging. So you land on the shore here, there's a little giant turtle that would give a enchanted shield if you killed it, and then you would come up here, up this ramp, which seems to be partially finished. Looked a lot better in my version. This was actually my favourite chapter because it looked bloody good. This is a very old version. These pots should actually be in the ground. They were floating really high, but little custom flowers like that. Looks very cool. They did that in the original Warcraft 3 campaign as well. They just made them go underground, and then you got this little custom doodad. Anyway, so coming up here, you would cross a boss line, which I think was around here or so. Going through, you would see that Windrunner Village is being raised by a Death Knight, as well as a bunch of orcs and ogres and Amani trolls. This is a throwback to one of the levels in Warcraft 2. I think it's the Dead Rises, Quel'Thalas Falls, and I had the Death Knight say something like that, so very clever. But basically you'd have this big combat encounter at the beginning of the mission. You've got the remnants of the High Elven troops fighting alongside you versus these guys. the boss, he could animate dead, he did a few other things. Nice, spicy way to start things off. At the same time, you had one of the characters that fought Zul'jin alongside Lor'themar, and I forgot the other bloody people's names, but he would be fighting his way through some Amani trolls, and that's not how it looked. He would find his way back up to Windrunner village, and he would say some elvish crap and then come fight with you to defend Windrunner village. He would then chat with you. After that, he says, okay, there's a little Amani encampment over here, and there's a bigger one up here. At dawn, or at dusk, I think it was, we will head east and we'll attack these. And so at the time of day, you'd have about 30 seconds to kind of get your crap together. And he would train some units. They would start rebuilding the base, repairing the base, and then they'll send a strike force over to take this base, which you would fight alongside them. And with that, you're also given a mini town hall, mini farm, mini altar of kings, and many other things like that to set up a base. And he leaves his troops with you just to help defend you as you set up a base. And you also get to see a bit of the custom high elf tech tree, because it's a custom human tech tree, custom high elf tech tree, custom orc tech tree, and then you had a custom bloody troll tech tree, which is all lost because I lost it all. So you'd set up a base over here, and after a while, the Bleeding Hollow clan would come with Kilrog and attack you from over here. He would talk a bit of crap, and well, he would just continually attack you throughout the level. If you destroy his base, you get the Eye of Kilrog, which summoned a invisible Eye of Kilrog, which could see invisible units do scouting for you, and it could also phase into the material plane, where it could just cast a low damage nuke for 40 damage and just spam cast it effectively. Anyway, so going back here, there was also a couple of Death Knights strewn out throughout this region. Each of them had their custom abilities based on the Warcraft II abilities. We had Animate Dead, we had Death and Decay, we had Whirlwind, we had a couple of cool ones. I think we had Haste, and then we had Unholy Shield, which made them lose 20% of their health, but then makes them invulnerable or something like that. Can't quite remember. And a few Easter eggs scattered throughout, including a little X marks a spot with flowers, which you'd need either a catapult to attack around there, or use the Eye of Kilrog to actually see the treasure chest. You'll get a little item there. You had a nice little hidden grove, some little trees. You had to kind of use one of your smaller units, or Captain Roderick I think you had to use, because he's the only one with it. Inventory, Sir Garethos was too big, and you'd come through here. You pick up an item over here in Kilrog's base after you destroy the burning Bleeding Hollow. And also, this is where I put that sheep. I put a sheep, and that singular sheep that I put here, and added that potion of clarity to, that made me lose everything. Made me lose 8 months of progress here, because I decided to put that little Easter egg in. So, that destroyed it. Here we had Laughing Skull, what was it, Burning Blade? And I can't remember. We had a minor base over here that you'd just destroy, making your way through. They would be sending attacks, alternating between attacking the High Elves and attacking yourselves. Bleeding Hollow would do the same, and then you had a Amani tribe doing the same thing. You also had a Shadow Hunter over here with a Voodoo Spirits, Mana Burn, don't remember his other spells. Nice little thing, and then you had Kilrog with his Soul Burn, and then you had an ultimate with Spirit Link and Feral Spirits and stuff like that. And that was the general premise. Go through here, destroy these Amani, because you can't head over east towards Tranquillin to relieve those troops here, whilst you've got people at your back, so that's the purpose. And then after 20 minutes or so, a bunch of Dragonmaw would come through here with their riders, and they would also have a Red Dragon. And you'll see that Red Dragons in this campaign were going to be strong. They weren't going to be pushovers. They weren't immune to magic, however they were resistant, and they actually took 30% less damage despite having heavy armor. So piercing did less, and magic was actually not very effective in doing damage to it. So they had spell resistance, and they actually were beefy. I think they had like 4,000 HP. They were much bigger, and they're just going to beeline to Windrunner village, which one of your goals is to protect here and to protect your own base. So that's chapter 3 in a nutshell. Now, chapter 4, I had begun working on it, but it wasn't nearly complete. But the general premise here is, once you had killed those Amani trolls in chapter 3, you headed east, doing the plan with General Maldaza, where you wanted to go relieve Tranquillin and then push Zul'jin back to Zul'aman. And you get wizards for the first time. So your first dedicated casters that aren't support, and they'll be able to summon water elementals, which would be pretty tough, but you'd only be able to summon them once. So basically you push eastward, you would establish a base, destroying some orcs in the process, and then allies from Windrunner Village would constantly be coming to assist you. You wouldn't control them, you would have an ability to actually choose which base they would attack, and this would be important because going into this chapter, this was a huge chapter. It was basically the finale for all troll encounters. You weren't really going to encounter them at all for the rest of the campaign, but basically you had 3 minor troll bases, one with a, I don't know what to bloody call them, but one of those people who do lower aspects of the hawk, one with a bear, so mini bosses over there. You had a general Amani base, and then you had the main Amani base, which had Zul'jin's main troops, and that would be the one that you'd have to destroy to actually win the chapter, but you'd want to destroy some of these minor bases to make your life a bit easier. You would also be additionally fighting 2, not Boulder Fist clan, 2 Laughing Skull clan bases, which I believe each had a ogre hero, which were the warlords at the time. There'd be a Dragonmaw clan with Zula Head, Wackhead or something like that. So you'd have to deal with some dragons eventually, so you'd want to destroy those pretty quickly. And you'd also have some Black Rock clan remnants, because a lot of the Black Rock clan had actually pulled out Quel'Thalas at this time, because I think Gul'dan screwed them. So it was really all these remnants banding together and just pushing on to destroy Quel'Thalas. So you would have a base, but you know, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bases or so. So it was only yourselves and people at Tranquillin who were, you know, fighting off a siege. But you also had the people from Windrunner Village coming in, and you could direct which base you wanted them to attack, and you could decide if you wanted them to be melee focused, spellcaster focused, range focused, siege focused, and so forth. But they couldn't send all their troops because they would leave Windrunner Village exposed, so they're just sending villagers, not villagers, their fighters over to support you, and they'd come at regular intervals. Now, one of the things you could do, if you destroyed one of the bases to the southeast, this would allow General Maldaza to come in, and he'd be able to establish a base, and then you've now got 3 allies, and from there you'll just slowly destroy all the other bases until it's Tranquillin, General Maldaza, and Sir Garethos, and you'll all be able to run east, destroy Zul'jin's base, and then the final encounter is a boss fight with Zul'jin and a bunch of his soldiers versus you. He'll be pushed back, and then Sir Garethos would get a bit of news saying that Blackwood, his hometown, is under attack, and that he needs to quickly go there. So naturally Sir Garethos packs up, heads south after saying his goodbyes, and then you're into chapter 5, which this one isn't a base building one. This is basically a dungeon crawl through Eastwald and eventually find Blackwood, kill the person who killed your father, and then you go from Sir Garethos to Lord Garethos, because you're now a lord, because the Baron's dead. So that's effectively the end of chapter 5, and at the end of that you have Sir Garethos. You know, he's a bit pissed off because his hometown got destroyed whilst he was over in Quel'Thalas fighting, but hey, they were his allies, so, and they were fighting the orcs as well, so it's the Second War, that's what happens. But then we get a cinematic, which happens after. It's a standalone cinematic which basically tells a story between Second War and the Third War, when the Scourge starts coming along, and Quel'Thalas, they pull back after the Second War, basically saying, well, you guys didn't actually help us too much, so we don't give a crap about the alliance. And Sir Garethos would be very salty about this, going, I bloody, you know, gave my all. We gave so much for you guys, and you ungrateful pricks are standing back. So this is where his hate for elves would begin. Very untrustworthy. But it would also tell, hey, so Arthur's Menethil killed King Tyrannus, and you know Sir Garethos is a patriot, so I mean his voice lines always mention for King Tyrannus in his war cry, so he's quite pissed off about that. But basically it's a time skip as we go into the Third War, and after King Tyrannus is dead, so we're going to Frozen Throne time, or just before it, basically once Eastward has become the Eastern Plague Clans. So chapter 6, and chapter 5 you also unlock Knights. Chapter 6, you're introduced to a new character, Kristoff, which is a cleric from Kalteris, which is kind of interesting because in the Reforged edition, Sir Garethos actually has a Kalteris banner on his chest. I think is an oversight that the people actually doing the model, but hey, kind of works for me. But Kristoff is over here helping out. He's introduced to Sir Garethos, and this is canon. He's actually in World of Warcraft briefly, not a very important character, they just kill him off. But he's brought in, and I'm also introducing everybody to a new unit, Dragoons, which are Kaltira's people, which are just joining Sir Garethos. But basically, the Chapter 6 is another dungeon crawl, introducing you to Kristoff and his abilities. You're just making your way out of Eastwell / Eastern Plague Lands, and making your way southwest over through Western Plague Lands and over to the Ultra Mountains. That's effectively Chapter 6. Chapter 7, you run into Kalthus, who's, just doing his thing. Or probably just as you're leaving the Western Plague Lands, you run into him or something along those lines. And the objective for this mission is to cross Ulteric Mountain. You fight some ogres in the Syndicate. Again, we're doing these changes in sort of terrain. Chapter 5, you're back into winter. Chapter 6, you're now into that Luron Full or Plague Woods looking thing. Chapter 7, you're getting a bit of snow in there, and it's also that Luron Summer sort of look because you're getting closer to Dalaran. So you fight your way through Ulteric Mountains, and you're heading over to Dalaran, so you want them to retake Dalaran. Chapter 8 begins with Kristoff heading over to South Shore, over in, what's that, Hillsbrad, Foothills, and he's going to be looking for assistance over there. So it's between Kale and Garethos to build a base and take Dalaran, and it's a hard fight. There's a lot of undead there. However, partway through that mission, you actually get a return of Captain Roderick. Instead of being a demi-hero, he is now a hero, and he leads a bunch of knights and paladins, which are another unit, as well as Kristoff being with him. He helps you take Dalaran. So, and Kalthus did help take Dalaran. Then there's an individual cinematic where they go back to South Shore. You might recall in some of the old, Burning Crusade, Heavens of Time, Old Foothill, Old Hillsbrad, where you free Thrall. There's that little Easter egg where you see Herod and whatnot, and you find that a lot of the Scarlet Crusade members actually were in South Shore. And Sir Garethos and Captain Roderick are going to be there, just chatting to some of these members who are going to later become future Scarlet Crusade members. And Garethos will be complaining about, the elves, because, they're saying the Alliance did nothing for them. And that's just blatantly false. So he's going to be complaining about them a lot there, which is going to help put in some of that anti-elf Semitism into these people who would later form the Scarlet Crusade. Then we go into Chapter 9, which basically, once you've taken Dalaran, we have Kale going off to the west, where he runs into Maeve and Hiranda, getting supplies. Meanwhile, your troops, Lord Garethos, Kristoff, and Captain Roderick, you're heading north to repel a Scourge strike force, and amongst them is Lord Maldaza. So General Maldaza becomes Lord Maldaza. He's one of the default Death Knight names, and you'd actually kind of recognise, oh crap, there's a Death Knight, the last name Maldaza, and he actually has a little weapon that he had in the original, missions. And you go, oh, well, that's kind of sad, and you'd be able to get his eye. And a little throwback there, some of the actual Death Knights other than Arthas. Anyway, so you do that, and then there'll be a cinematic when Kalthus gets back. He's late, and Sir Garethos will do his whole thing about, I thought you elves were unsure with your timing and whatnot, and Kalthus says it couldn't be helped. And he goes yada yada yada, and then he says, okay, go ahead and repair these observatories. Kalthus will protest, saying, we're soldiers, we belong on the front line. Garethos says, I'm going to the front line. He'll then go have a chat with the paladin that Kalthus saved, and hear about how the Naga were working for Illidan, which from his perspective was a demon, and had kidnapped this paladin and was doing some dark magic. So this is where Sir Garethos' distrust of the Naga begins, and why he's so pissed off when he finds Kalthus consulting with the Naga later. And then he explains to the paladin, who's like, why are you being such an arsehole to Kalthus, that Sir Garethos understands that the elves are bloody good with magic. Kalthus used to go to Dalaran, he was a student there, and who better to actually repair these arcane observatories in, arcane elves. So it actually makes sense if you think about it. Anyway, so Garethos said, I'm going to the front line. So he goes to the front line to the east, while telling Kalthus to go repair those observatories. And here it's just going to be a generic Scourge mission, except we're going to fight Kalthusar. That's going to be the end boss, because what the hell is Kalthusar up to these times? I'm sure he's going around just destroying the Eastern and Western Plague Lands, so Sir Garethos is fighting that force off, because why the hell not? I mean, it says he didn't. Chapter 11, they go back and Sir Garethos says, I heard you bloody owls were consulting with the Naga, don't do it again. Because, you know, they're demon worshippers. And then you'll go back to the east. So you're going to go back to the east, and then you're going to be fighting another Scourge force. They're just unrelenting. And you're very resource starved. You just need to survive for 20 minutes or so, because you realise this is a fight you're not going to win. So you kind of destroy some original bases, and then you bunker down, and then you send an an envoy back to Kaltha saying, hey, we're actually recalling all of our knights and other footmen because we bloody need them. And Kalthus gets in a bloody hissy going, no, you can't do that, you're leaving us to die. Well, actually, Garethos is fighting the front lines. He needs his bloody knights and whatnot. Because it's a hard fight, that makes complete sense. And I mean, Kalthus, you said you want to be on the front line, so you just repair the arcane observatories. You can do some proper fighting, just like Garethos and his boys are doing some proper fighting. Anyway, so knights eventually come and help you reinforce your position, and then you race back to Dalaran. Because if you look at the campaign for the Blood Elves, they do get back pretty bloody quickly. And then they find Kalthus talking to the demon worshipping Naga, or the demon serving Naga, and he goes, okay, screw you guys. Sorry, you're gonna have to die. And before this, the Paladin also leaves because he's gonna go to Lordaeron before the Undead Frozen Throne campaign takes place, because he actually gets killed there in Chapter 2. And then we have Chapter 12, which is Dalaran Dungeons, where Garethos and his troops are going to be going through the Dalaran Dungeons. There's going to be some strike forces by Naga throughout, you have to fight through them, and you eventually get to the crossing. This is in the same level, there's a dungeon section, and then you get to the crossing, where they see them going through a portal, they have no idea what they're up to, they assume the worst demon worshippers, they're working with a Naga to go bring this demon guy back. So naturally he says to all his boys, nobody lives forever, go blow yourselves out, up, become a hero. And in this mission, you're basically trying to destroy the base of Kalthus and the Naga, and you can actually equip your mercenaries with bombs to make them go sapper mode. You can buy mercenaries, you can buy troops, anybody who equips himself with a bomb can blow themselves up. And you also have to disable some power generators or some crap to get rid of their stronger towers. After this chapter, there's a cinematic, which basically talks about what happened next. Garethos settles down going, okay, we can't keep chasing Kalthus, we have bigger fish to fry. And so they head off north towards the capital city, and we're trying to make a bit of variety. So we've done our Lordaeron Fall, we've done our Lordaeron Winter, we've done our Dalaran, and now we're going to capital city. And here, instead of fighting undead like we've been doing for the last few chapters, Blood Elves and Naga, you are now going to be fighting a demon army for one of the Dreadlords, maybe Deathrock, I can't remember which Dreadlords are which, and you defeat them, but shortly after being defeated by them, Balnazar comes around and he possesses everybody. Then we get a cinematic, and that's when Sylvanas frees Garethos and his men when Deathrock is killed, and then you'll be fighting Balnazar with Sylvanas' help. Captain Roderick will get a side quest to go find those missing dwarves, and go, oh, you dwarves are pretty bloody useless. Eventually you kill Balnazar, he's the final boss. He's a very exciting boss. Again, you're fighting the demon troops rather than undead. Bit of undead and demon troops. They have, Sylvanas has her apothecaries, and the other ones have demony and undead type units. And then it brings us to chapter 15. So something that Garethos always gets screwed over with is he gets hit by Veramanthras maybe twice, and then hit with Rain of Fire, and then he just dies. That's ridiculous. Garethos in the default campaign, he's got Avatar, he's got Holy Light, he's got Shockwave, and he's got Devotion Aura. He is one tanky, beefy guy, and he can get Crown of Kings amongst other things. If he just popped Avatar, he would be able to easily destroy Sylvanas and Veramanthras by himself, hands down. There's bloody YouTube videos to show it. So this one is just a simple mission. You're being betrayed, your objective is to survive. It's a bit like Halo Reach's final chapter, where you just try to survive as long as possible. The boss in this situation is Veramanthras, Sylvanas. Every time you knock them back, they basically bugger off, and then more units come in swarming you. So it's just really how long can you survive. Eventually Garethos, he dies. He's not surviving that one. And Sylvanas will go do her spiel, Veramanthras will simp for her and cry about it later. But also at the same time, Captain Roderick is going to see, I don't know, over a hill or something, he will see that Sylvanas has betrayed to Garethos. And this kind of leads to why this campaign was called Scarlet Blood. Because the idea is, well, Captain Roderick will then go back to South Shore and he will report what happened. Sir Garethos, or Lord Garethos, the guy bloody taking command of all the people still remaining Lordaeron, was just betrayed by the Forsaken. They'd known him for a few days, they agreed to go kill these demons, they did so together, and immediately she betrays him without, you know, yeah, he was pretty crass, crude and crass, but they just killed him, cold blood, like that, for no other reason than him saying, okay, as per our agreement, now leave the city. And so the Forsaken have now betrayed the remnants of the Alliance, the Elves have betrayed them, Dwarves were kind of just useless, getting lost from Ironforge, and then the Scourge is the Scourge. So this is basically painting a picture for Sir Garethos' death, leading to the creation of the Scarlet Crusade, that hate Elves, don't like Dwarves, hate the Forsaken for bloody good reason. I don't know why everybody's like, oh, well, Sir Garethos was a racist, so therefore it was good that he was killed. Well, that doesn't really do well for, you know, relationship with the Forsaken, given the first thing you do with the humans is you kill their bloody leader after, you know, retaking the capital city with him. So that's just a dick-ass move. Also, Kristoff, he doesn't actually take place in this last mission after being freed from Deathrock. He's basically says, don't bloody side with Sylvanas, don't side with the undead, you can't trust him. And that's lore accurate as well. So at this point he just pisses off and he goes over to Kalimdor and teams up with Jaina eventually, and Jaina has to kill him at some point because he gets tricked by a demon, but that's not actually relevant to Scarlet Blood. So that was the whole premise for my campaign. Lost it, not doing it. It's a bit of a bloody shame because I thought this would have been a pretty cool campaign. Now, talking about Arcanum Cruade, the campaign I'm actually making, I'm not going to give too many details at this point, but the general premise is it's based on my D&D setting. For centuries, there was a period called the Jotun Reign, which is basically the reign of giants, where they had basically enslaved every other race on Earth. Eventually, the other races banded together and rebelled against these giants and removed their shackles and started genociding the crap out of these giants. The only reason this was actually possible is because the giants also started pissing off dragons. So we actually had some dragons killing the giants, and during this war between giants and dragons, we also had the other races who then started annihilating the giants as well. This also drove a lot of innovation just throughout the world, which was pretty neat. Anyway, so a couple of centuries there's a couple of centuries being enslaved, and then a century or two after, there's still a power vacuum as all these civilizations are starting to form and figuring out how they want to do things. And in this power vacuum, a bunch of magi come together, and they call themselves the Magnum Arcanum. Yeah, Magnum Arcanum. That's their organization, where there's 10 or 12 really powerful magi, and they use their powers, you know, level 8, level 9, spells, and they just re-enslave everybody again. And they'll, you know, rule everything in a magocracy, in a bit of a fascist magocracy around the place. They all have their own sort of dominions and their own servants. You know, you might have a hydromancer that has cultists, Naga cultists basically, and seaman cultists, and then you have one guy who's powerful enchanter. You might have a bunch of demi-humans serving him, and another necromancer or a lich, and so forth. And they basically enslave everybody again. Eventually, people rise up again, and they unite in a religious fervour, and they declare the Arcanum Cruade under the three Imperiums, Aurelian, Galdrian, and Mirak. So they band together under a religion, and they actually pray to these Imperiums, which are basically major gods in the setting, and the Archons, which are gods, and then you have the minor gods, which are Aeons, but they don't actually come into this really, because in Arcanum Cruade you only really get divine intervention from the Imperiums, which give you major Empyrean powers, I suppose, divine intervention powers, and passive auras and upgrades and whatnot, and then you also get the individual Archon abilities, which you can devote at each tier. Now, none of that makes sense yet, because this is a talk before I actually go through the tech tree. So that's the general premise of the campaign. I'm not going to give more away than that, so on to some gameplay next. Alright, so now we're actually testing out the tech tree of the Askarian Empire. So it's a bit different to what I would like to showcase, in the sense that this is a melee game, and the tech tree for the Askarian Empire is not made for melee, it's made for campaigns. We've got some pre-constructed buildings at the start of the game, so you don't have to go through the process of building everything. So here from the beginning, I'm just showcasing the various buildings of the Askarian Empire. Then in a later video, I'll be going through these in a bit more depth. So here we have our main hero, the Justica. He's got an AoE Thunderclap type ability, he's got Divine Smite, which has additional effects, he's got Pursuit of Justice, and he's got Requiem, which I think I'll be showing you over the course of this video. So the first thing I wanted to make was the Order of the Three, and that's because it's the key thing that makes the Askarian Empire interesting, in that you can have your clerics go over and start worshipping at it and praying for divine intercession. So here I've triggered it so that I get a couple of clerics just so I'm not so gold disadvantaged at the beginning, and because I wouldn't be able to actually get these clerics in here until tier 2. So they're going in there and they're immediately going to the Order of the Three and they start using divine intercession. With this, it increases the mana regeneration of the Empyrean Conduit and allows me to use divine intelligence more regularly. So here we have Captain Roderick. He's a demi-hero, which is a stronger than regular hero. That also not hero, unit, which also has inventory. With him he's got a couple of abilities, which I was showcasing just a moment ago, and there he used Decimate, which is a nice AoE cone. It does some damage and also does a small stun in an area. He's also got Shield Slam, which is also another stun that knocks back, knocks enemies back, and an ability called Rally, which just gives AoE movement speed to those around him. He has default magic resistance, and if he learns Defend, that also gives magic resistance when he's using that. So here we've got a basic building for the main units of the Askarian Empire. We've got the garrison, and here we've got a marketplace. So the marketplace is kind of useful in this melee situation in that I can actually purchase lumber as I need for a quick tech upgrade to a key tier 2. So that's what I'm basically doing here, because I want to upgrade as soon as possible so that I can go and build a Tempest Chapel, which allows me to build more clerics, which allows them to go to the Order of the Three, and allow them to go for Divine Intercession, which increases the mana regeneration, or divine favor of the Empyrean Conduit, which allows me to upgrade my Empyrean Conduit, which I'm about to do now. First, Spiritual Overgrowth, which I missed it. I'm not actually recording this live, I'm looking at my old replay. So here I'm picking an Empyrean. So I've got 3 options. I'm going with Aurelian. So Aurelian gives me a passive Thorns type aura globally. It also gives me a Shockwave Barrage, which has a relatively low divine favor cost, which makes it pretty handy if I were to go creeping in a melee game. I've also picked Virilia as the Archon, which I wanted to devote the Askarian Empire to. With her, she comes with an ability that does an AoE heal, which pulses for 3 times. So here we have the second hero of the Askarian Empire, which is going to be coming in later in the campaign. So probably, I don't know, chapter 6, 7, 8, something like that. Haven't really put too much thought outside the first 5 chapters at this stage, but she'll be the second hero that comes in, and she's a bit of a spellcaster, a bit more of a supportive hero, as opposed to the Justica, which is just a tanky, brawly right there. So those are the divine interventions that I was talking about a moment ago. So again, this is a melee map, so we're testing things out, and the balancing isn't perfect yet. Here I've used Atonement, which does an AoE damage and also reduces the attack damage of the units. I'm using Consecrating Ogre, which also reduces movement speed, attack speed of the units affected, and damages them in an AoE. So a lot of AoE coming out of here. Now spells in Arcanum Cruade is supposed to be pretty powerful, because the whole premise is, well, spellcasters have taken over the world effectively, so spells weren't powerful, it wouldn't really reflect that. So that's a bit of a hard thing to balance, so that'll be an interesting one as I proceed with this. So now I'm training up a bunch of archers, just to get a bit more support as I go creeping, and just popping around. There's not much to do because I'm just waiting to build a Tempest Chapel. Here I'm building a lumber mill because I want to build some knights later. And a blacksmith because I also want to unlock the knight. So, getting a couple of the archers, getting a bit confused because they say stand and deliver, which is the unit training noise, but also when you click on them, that's the noise they make. Make a custom unit sound for them, which should make sense. I'll use my own voice. I was planning on doing that for the mercenary, but I mean, nobody uses the mercenary, so I may as well use it for that one rather than making them sound like bandits.
I'll take care of it.
Do not fear.
because it's a bit odd. So one of the things that you may notice is all my heroes have relatively low hit points. That's because I've changed the strength scaling, and I've got it called named endurance, versatility, and faith. And basically all those stats are weakened. Strength gives, I think it's 15 hit points per strength level, and faith gives 10 mana per faith level. And the effective armor has also been reduced as well, so armor values aren't as impressive, but you can also stack a hell of a lot of armor values using the abilities in the game, divided dimensions, and so forth. So you can still make yourself very, very tanky. I think I managed to get myself up to 60-70% damage resistance on some of my units when stacking everything. So here I'm upgrading to the next Divine Favor level, so it's a bit of a payoff. It's a trade-off between upgrading a Divine Favor level, which also upgrades the passive aura that your Empyrean gives you, and also unlocks the ability to unlock different Archon devotions, which gives you more Divine Interventions to choose from, but it costs Divine Favor, and therefore you can't actually use your other Divine Interventions for the time being, because you'll probably just spend all your mana. And that's why it's important to go and chuck a bunch of clerics there. Use that upgrade to get the additional mana regeneration, and also go ahead and use energy spires, which I'll show you down the line, to get increased mana over there. So there we use the Tempest Grace Dimension, so this is from Aurelian. It's got a limited use of 2, but basically it makes units in the area get upgraded to their elite counterpart. So it saves you a bit of gold, a bit of lumber, and also if you were to use it on a cleric or something, or somebody who doesn't have an elite counterpart, it just gives them some default evasion, mana, and hit points. Here again, got Atonement, big AoE, and we've got another big AoE from the Decimate. We've got our Justica. Haven't really used too much there, just trading aggro so they don't hit him, because I'm still getting used to the increased damage from the default creeps as well, from the lower armor and just lower hit points that I'd expect from a hero. So it's going to be interesting, and I think I might have to change the defenses of hero armor so that they take less spell damage and less magic damage, just because you would theoretically be able to just nuke some of the units down, because a lot of the default units you can have some single target nukes. Make things feel interesting. So here I'm building an energy spire, so that's a support building, so to speak. You can give various auras to the buildings around it, and it can also shield buildings. If you're under siege, you could have 6 of these energy spires. You could, in effect, block. I think you could go up to about 1800 damage. You use the upgraded version of Energy Shield. You can basically put a shield of 300 on a building in its vicinity, and also increase the armor of the buildings in the vicinity and mana regeneration of buildings in the vicinity, which some units like the Tempest Chapel, Inquisition Chamber, and so forth can actually get mana regeneration, as well as your Warcraft III. So here I'm planning for a big creep camp, so I'm stacking on some armor there, that area of protection, popping off that atonement, and now we're going and using Healing Echo, which is just going to heal my units 3 times over the course of 6 seconds. So that's going to keep me nice and popped up, and my units won't really have any issue whatsoever. So because there's such a long pickup time in getting yourself started, given, like I said, you need to build the Altar of 3, and then you're going to commit some of your clerics to actually go and worship at the Altar of 3, I've actually delayed the 2 AIs that I'm versing in this melee map from upgrading the units for, I can't remember how long. I think it was once the Canoness appeared, that's when they're on pause and they can start upgrading. So I think, retrospectively, this may have been a bit too strong, because I did also give myself the clerics without having to actually train them, which has been a big boon. It makes a big difference to have those early clerics to go help with the Divine Intercession. If I were to do a campaign level where you start off with basically nothing, I think I'll have you start off with a couple of clerics at the very least, so that you can have them. And here I am showing that passive effect. But ultimately in campaigns, once you know the units, you don't really start off having to build the whole army again, because that's just a pain in the ass. So it's really introducing one unit at a time. And also you would have seen at the beginning of the melee map, I decided to go upgrade my labourer to a foreman, just because it has slightly quicker building speed, which is Alpha because I wanted that alpha of a 3 as soon as possible. Once again, I'm loving the atonement. I think it just looks neat. I'm using it so much. Should probably go ahead and use Pursuit of Justice sometime. And I'll also rename the tomes, but I haven't renamed Slippers of Agility. What am I going to sell here? Speed, Slippers of Agility, don't need those. Scroll of Healing, yeah, that's a handy little thing to have. And moving on.
For the light. Very wise.
So, melee upgrades, they're pretty standard. I've got the Askarian forces split into 2 people, faith-based users and just melee warriors effectively. Most of it's fairly intuitive if you think about it, such as the machinery that's the Constellation, they use faith-based armor, and the Zodiac is just a big bulk steel enchanted by magic, but it's basically physical. The only thing that really throws you off would be archers actually use the faith-based stuff, but you would also see that in that they can use enchanted arrows, so I just couldn't put everything into one camp, otherwise it would make it a bit too strong. So here we see me attacking the random computer one. Unfortunately, they're a bit too far behind, so they're not actually putting too much of a fight up. But because there's a second AI, I think they're going to come along and they're going to help. It's going to make things a bit alongside. Get a little Shockwave Barrage, showing off the Divine Interventions, and showing how those Divine Interventions do make a difference. Now, I did pop Book of the Dead, which is probably going to make me wings fight significantly more than I would have. That is what it is. So we're going to keep fighting for a while. We've got a Prayer of Protection now. Nice AoE armor for my people. And it looks like, yes, that's right, the other duty just so happened to be Knight as well. It's a bit of a shame. I was hoping they were going to be undead so I could show off some of the Paladin abilities. So there I've got Sorcerer showing off the Ignite ability, which does a dog roll my unit and also just gives me a chance to miss. Popping Prayer of Protection again, and also trying to get the little drip up, hit him with the Dismay, and then we're going to just go try to destroy them nice and quick so that we're not overrun down the line. So just putting some early aggression. So here we go with Luxima. Unfortunately don't have enough Divine Favour to show off what Luxima's ability is. We pop the Pursuit of Justice and you'll see that every time the Justice hits somebody there's that nice aura of energy around whoever he hits. Nice little explosion, and that's where the extra damage comes in. And it also gives him a lot of movement speed because he's a slow moving unit, so it's a good thing to have. Alright, I imagine he's going to want something similar to Phase Boots in Dota, so that he can use that movement speed and just run through crap. Potentially make it based on Wind Walk or something, but
yes, my friend.
I mean that'll allow him to phase through people, which would be quite handy. Plus, otherwise, given the increased supply cap and no units take a bit more supplies than normal, I imagine things might get a bit messy just trying to navigate around things, especially if you had, 80-foot infantry doing this. So here I'm trying to get a bit of variety because I'm now training some paladins. I want him to be a bit stronger, so we train those up. Okay, Luxima's, and then we have Luxima's Radiance. So what that does is just does damage in an area, but it also heals allies in an area and resurrect a unit in an area. So it'll be good for big fights, keeping units alive. Pop that up with Virelia's Healing Echo and Shockwave Barrage, and the Tempest Grace. You could just be upgrading all your units, making them elite, and then just keeping them alive and making them just constantly sit there fighting. It wouldn't be too much macro, you'll just basically bring ups onto your team. Prayer of Protection in there as well, it'll be pretty tough. It'll be hard to beat that. So, here we got our lovely Paladin running in here. Because I went with the Empyrean Rallying, he allows you to get an upgrade, which basically increases your cleric's AoE heal, and also gives your paladins a healing aura, as you can see with that yellow thing, and also the paladin were to die, then all the friendly allies around him would be healed for a little bit points. Now, it doesn't affect himself, so if you have more than one paladin, well, you're now getting the effect of both paladins, but otherwise you wouldn't be getting the effect of both paladins, you'd just be getting the effect of one paladin. So it's a lot of stacking in that regard, like energy spires you need them around each other, and paladins you need to put paladins, because the auras don't affect self And the only real auras in this game so far is with the Paladin and with that Askarian aura, which is global. Every unit at the moment is affected by it, so any melee attacks against them will return damage back. So here I've basically decimated purple space. I'm going, oh well, crap, I still have quite a bit to show off. And, you know, I want to show this tier 3 and tier 4 of the Askarian devotion, but we're not going to get there. So keep training Paladins because I'm going for a very melee orientated focus build on this one, but that's the thing, depending on your Askarians and your Archons that you decide to select, you might go, I want to go for spellcasters on this one. Go ahead and focus on machinery, siege units. So a bit of variety and, you know, different sort of divine interventions would synergize better. For example, if I'm in Galdrian and in tier 4, that would also work when I have a lot of melee fighters because it gives them all attack speed. Movement speed allows them to just fight. And if I were to go across tier 3 Archon Devotion, that gives me the Divine Intervention Sanctuary, which just increases alpha generation and alpha in an area, which again would make it a very formidable foe to just sit there battling with. Or if I went Mirach and I got the tier 4 Devotion, I might just use Planar Rift and destroy an enemy's army before even engaging with it. The only thing I need to worry about there is I don't actually want to be hit by that as well, because some of these divine interventions can hit your own allies. And this is on purpose. So here I'm showing off fire elementals from sorcerers. So they can only use this ability once. And there's also a limit of sorceresses that you can have. And you can have 7 or 8 of them. So you can have 7 or 8 sorceresses, and technically you could then give 8 fire elementals for about 5 minutes each, which is pretty bloody powerful, given that each of these fire elementals with appropriate mana can use an AoE nuke. So pretty nifty stuff. The team fights will get pretty hectic, and I imagine as the campaign progresses, as I get better at balancing things as well, the enemies will also be getting divine interventions of some form, probably from evil deities or from the Magi themselves that you're basically hunting down. That's the whole premise of the campaign. You're hunting down these Magis from the Magna Arcanum, and they'll be able to use extremely powerful spells against you. And also they might have mythical units like dragons, which will probably have about 5k hit points. They'll be able to summon, they'll be able to use abilities from D&D, Earthquake, Meteor Storm, Meteor Swarm, Coal will be a big one, and all sorts of things like that. So that'll keep things interesting, so you're not just overpowered yourself, the enemies could be overpowered. Or, let's say you're fighting a Necromancer, they're going to just have big numbers, and you're going to just be attacked, and in between those attacks you're going to use your divine interventions to buy yourself an opportunity to really make some progress, build some momentum. So here we've got the fire elemental using Flame Brand, so just showing off the nuke that I was talking about. So if you had 8 sorceresses and you summoned 8 fire elementals, you could have 8 little pillars of flame like that. You just be able to nuke most units pretty well. So I think a lot of the default items I'll still have to go through and clean up at some point. Such as Gauntlets of Strength, those would be... you could probably still have them Gauntlets of Ogre Strength. I mean, those items are actually based on D&D. Anyway, Boots of Valentine, Gauntlets of Ogre Strength. I think Belt of Giant Strength might also be one. Yeah. Taken from D&D. I mean, most of Warcraft abilities are D&D based in some regard. I mean, just clicking on Knights are kind of nice because they can win some pretty cool abilities, like the ability to charge enemies, it's Requiem, a big AoE explosion. I like to make things fancy, I want all the spells to feel pretty impactful, and to make most units have some form of ability. Even the Knights they can charge. If you've got a bunch of Knights, you could have all 10 of them charge a single target, for example, which would kind of be a bit stupid, but I guess it would be effective if that was your intention. But other than that, they take reduced damage, high hit points, high armor, and they cleave. And here we have Dominions, so they're the only flying unit of the Askarian Empire, but I want them to be pretty fancy. However, they do take a lot of supplies, because they're pretty low powerful. I mean, they're flying units with 1300 hit points or so, and they get some extremely powerful moves. And they're just interesting in the sense that you have both lunar and solar dominions.
Help me, help you.
Do not fear.
Kick down, Sparky.
I've also changed it so all of the default abilities, such as chain lightning one, will be hitting mechanical units as well. So that's the thing. You can hit mechanical units, and that's why I want any spell immunity. I know Infernals have spell immunity. I'm not sure if I want full spell immunity, or if I'll just have certain units just having a lot of resistance to spell damage. Such as dragons. I'm going to have dragons powerful. I want them big and powerful.
My prey is
So here we have the Dominion. So mystic damage, I'm going to change up the color of that so it doesn't look like chaos, because people will just go, oh, it's chaos, therefore it's super strong. Mystic damage is strong, but it's not the end all of all things. So mystic defense and mystic damage are pretty powerful. Heroes, I think, will be the ones who deal the most damage to mystic units, and mystic units mainly just things from different dimensions, such as, you know, celestials or devils, but also things such as dragons, maybe golems, other mystical type units.
The light is with us.
Let's see, we've got the Dominion. Let's see him in action. So he's got a default crit, and that kind of synergizes very well with that ability there, which I can't remember what it's called. Because it's Solar Fury or Market Burns, I can't remember. But basically just makes it attack bloody quickly, and that pops crits often. So Dominions in Solar form, they do a lot of auto attack, and they do a lot of nuke damage when you get the Ascendancy upgrade in there as well. So now we have Meteor Strike with Pyramus. That's the single most powerful Archon devotion spell.
Do not fear.
But we also have Singularity, which is another Aurelian spell, which has 3 charges. So Aurelian has a lot of, because Aurelian is the Empyrean of Vengeance and Tempest, a lot of his things are based on just owning crap. So he has a lot of damaging spells. A lot more, less variety than some of the other Empyreans, such as Mirak. He's got damaging spells, he's got utility spells, he's got defensive spells, and he's got I'm going to screw your shit up spells. Whereas Galdrian, he's got defensive, he's got utility,
Do not fear.
so more utility I suppose, and then he's got more support. So yeah, Galdrian's much more supportive, whereas Mirak is a mix of everything, and then Aurelian is just I'm going to screw you up. So quite a few units also have some auto-cast abilities like this. However, because I'm trying to manage spells, manage mana, and also show things off, I don't really want to do that. So here I'm trying to decide where do I want Meteor Strike to be, because Green's base isn't actually, none of the units are actually here at the moment. You know, well, I need to shut off. Like, okay, well, nothing's going to be hit. And then I go, I know what I can do. I can just use it on my own units, just to show that some abilities do actually hit your own units. So you've got to be clever on how you do things. So if I got hit by all of it, then I could do something like 500 damage, which would be pretty rough.
Sounds good.
Oh look, some trees.
I'll take care of it.
And we're gonna, yeah, Benediction, and here we go, we're just popping AoE ults. So a lot of eye candy out there. Good looking stuff. So Benediction, I guess, is kind of like Tranquility in a sense, except it's pulses of healing as opposed to slow heal. So here I'm just going to, I want to show, so I pop in, there is no spoon, I'm popping Singularity so you can see that big boom units flying around. Then we're going to use the Scorching Missiles and pop. Imagine if you had several Dominions, all popping Scorching Missiles, that would destroy something pretty bloody quickly. What else do we have here? Let's go tier 4. Stack Storm. This one does some damage to units in a pulse, and it also puts a buff on your allies and a debuff on enemy allies. And finally, we're going to go with, it's hard to choose, so we go with Erasmus to show off this Mystic Scroll, which basically you put it in a location, and then you can summon units from anywhere on the map over to this location. So, one of the things that you can do is pop it into an enemy base, summon all your units, but it can also die. And there we go, win.